Hi, we are live this Tuesday. I have something special for you. We are live with Jenny Arrington. Thank you for joining us, Jenny.
Hi there. Thank you
Hi.
for having me.
This is going to be a really good discussion. I'm excited about it. We are, I'm going to use Jenny's blurb so I don't get it wrong. Knowing your teen could be spiraling in anxiety, depression, and self-harm is terrifying. We've all been there, had a lot of discussions on Tuesdays and other days of the weeks about that issue. Our biggest job as parents is to at least keep them alive. We try to do that, right? And at best, help them to thrive. And thriving is defined by your family. It can feel impossible to know what to do during fragile developmental stages in the mindset of adolescents and their mental health. So, what do we do when we see them maybe spiraling, maybe having issues, or just having difficulties and we want to make things easier for them or help them learn to make things easier? Well, I have answers for you. I don't have the answers, Jenny does. I'll move this so you can see. Jenny Arrington is co-founder and lead teacher of Rebel Human and a wellness advisor for the Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. And she's here to show us easy practices that you can do with your teen to regulate their nervous system. That's where all these feelings come from. To change their mindset, help them think differently, and their self-concept in real time. So we're not talking about, giving them theoretical practices that if something were to happen, you should, but really, what do you do in the moment when you feel a certain way? And we all do feel a certain way at some point, right? What do you do to change the feeling, to change your mindset? What do you do to regulate yourself? Well, that's what she's going to help us with. And her manipulations update our operating system. If you think of us like a computer, right? We have an operating system. So that's what she's saying. She's going to teach us how to update our operating system in the moment. Thank you for joining us, Jenny.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for giving me this platform to talk about this really important stuff.
You're welcome. I know that sounded like a lot to people. They're like, what is she doing? But let me start by saying that I love what your website states. It says that this is not performative wellness. This is wellness in defense of a better future. And I love that because too often we're so desperate that we engage in unhelpful, trendy
Well, there it looks like Kamira just disappeared, so I'm
okay
until she gets back. Sorry about that, everybody. Just want to let everybody know that she will be back in just a second because she's getting on her hotspot. Her questions, though. Sometimes she sends me her questions. I do have her questions, so I'm just going to go to her first question. So we see our team is having trouble processing and regulating. What can we do to help them?
Absolutely. I do, before I get into this, I do want to state a disclaimer first, because we're dealing with life and death situations sometimes. So like, absolutely, if your teen is talking about harming themselves, and every expert says we shouldn't be afraid to talk to them about this, asking them if they have thoughts about harming themselves doesn't plant the idea in their head. That's one of these myths. It's better to talk about it, ask them about it, start this dialogue. And absolutely seek, immediate care, emergency care, all of that. What I'm teaching you today is to help teens who are dealing with, the low level anxiety or even the high level anxiety, um, you know, depression, just the normal load and, dealing with life and homework and friend stress and the stuff that we as adults deal with as well. I mean, just the constant barrage and emotions and all of that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. Um, so the first question Jess just gave me is, could you reframe that or restate that, Kamira?
Did she ask you what we do because our teens are under a lot of pressure?
Yes.
She said, that I'll set it up again. That, we know teens are under a lot of pressure between school. Most of them are doing too many extracurricular activities. Every year, early and earlier, they're stressing about college admissions or what they're going to do after high school, even if they're still in middle school. There are social and academic and financial and medical lingering effects from COVID and just the regular teen social dynamics. They're trying to figure out how to be social beings. So how does that kind of stress present itself with the teens that you work with? What does it look like?
Well, I mean, it can show up in just shutting down. It can show up in just going to escape in the phone, in the screens, in videos, in social media. It can come out in, lashing out or anger. But I think I want to back up and just start by saying, a lot of this comes from parents. And, parents mean well and we want them to thrive, but we can accidentally put this kind of pressure on them. Like, yes, they may be getting it from school and from friends, whether it's talking about college. But we have to remember that their model for what the world is really starts at home. It starts with you, the parent, how you're living your life, how you're modeling behavior around managing anxiety and life. That rubs off on them more than anything else. So if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not managing your nervous system and modeling that, it's going to be difficult for them. And also if you're, talking about college and when they're sophomores in high school, like that's going to add to it. So, I think it's really important. It can't be underscored enough. We have to take a look at ourselves as parents. And I'm a parent of 2 teenage girls all the time. What are we modeling? What are we paying attention to? What we pay attention to speaks volumes about what's important. So what are we focusing on? What are we talking about? And that really gets to also when we talk about mindset and self-concept, what we pay attention to. So what words we're telling ourselves, what words are spiraling around in our heads, what we're looking at, what articles we're reading, what, feeds or who are we following on all of that. What you pay attention to is what you end up caring about. So being very careful at curating what we are putting in through these eyes and our ears, because it's giving directions to our brain. So that's another kind of background thing that's really helpful once you know this, to know that our brains are like well-trained, loyal dogs, and they will do whatever you tell it. And you may be giving it orders by what you are reading and looking at. That's an order. What are you telling it? It will do it. So if you're saying to yourself, again, the parents, we need to sort ourselves too if we're going to help our children at all. If you're still swirling in the not good enoughs, and we all have had them since we were children, I'm not big enough or short enough or small enough or tall enough or have enough money, I'm not smart enough, or whatever the not good enough is, if you're telling yourself, I'm really just not smart enough, I'm not actually going to get anywhere. Your brain's like, oh, we're not smart enough and we're not going to get anywhere. Okay, I'm on it. And it's going to make it happen. So that's important in the household, what you're talking about, what you're focusing on, what all of that's giving orders, to the family brain.
And what are they, have they described to you what they're feeling in these moments when they're feeling anxious, these moments that we want to help them regulate?
Yeah, I mean, well, we want to get to them to the point where they can feel the sensations in their bodies.
Mhm.
Some of them may not be there yet, but our program teaches them to get there. But so you may hear your teen say, I have tightness in my chest. That would be great if they're at that point. My heart rate is elevated. I have sweaty palms. Or maybe it's just like, I can't focus. Or maybe you notice that they can't look you in the eye. Or, they're giving you one word answers, or they're just a lot of them just shut themselves up in their rooms. Warning signs too is just, are they not themselves? Are they not doing their homework? Are they not talking in the same way? Are they not excited about the same things? Like, all of those are warning signs, like, we need to dig in. Maybe we need to get a therapist. But it's not always that extreme. So another thing that's happened in our culture, along with like lawnmower parenting, which is, like plowing down every single obstacle with the intention, we think that we're helping our kids, but it's actually preventing them from learning skills that are going to be necessary for them to thrive in their lives and when they're on their own. But we also, so I think the lawnmower parenting trend is harming our kids. And then also pathologizing normal human emotions is actually another big problem. So it's okay for us to feel angry. Anger means like our boundaries have been breached in some way. Something needs to be fixed. A conversation needs to happen. Anger gives us that fiery fuel to go have that conversation and make things right. That's oversimplifying anger, but like, anger has a purpose. Anxiety has a purpose. On a very general level, it's usually we need more information about something. Again, an overgeneralization, but anxiety has a purpose. Guilt has a purpose. Guilt brings us back on our path. It points out that we weren't living in accordance with our values just then. So we say, thank you, guilt. Thank you for reminding us what our values are. So all of these emotions are absolutely necessary. They're like a roadmap to guide us through our lives. So when kids feel these feelings, and it's uncomfortable for parents to see their kids having these tough feelings, and I get that, but we need to let them have their feelings. And instead of saying, oh, how can I fix it? Everything's going to be okay. We need to sit and listen and ask questions and validate their feelings. Because if we don't validate and we run over and say, it's going to be okay, it's no problem, blah, 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 that's teaching them that their feelings don't matter. So we have to just sit with, and that's the definition of compassion. It's to suffer with. So we have to feel that discomfort of the uncomfortable feelings of our kids and just sit with it. It's hard. It's real. Being truly compassionate, it's really hard. It's painful because we're suffering with, but we need to sit with them and say, I know, I hear you. I get it. Yes. And sometimes just that act of sitting and suffering with and listening is enough. Teens, sometimes they just need to unload, and it immediately releases them from whatever that suffering or anxiety or depression or sadness or whatever, anger, whatever that feeling was. So that is like just number one step. Sit with, suffer with, listen, and validate. And that can be enough right there. And if a child is regularly anxious, and anxiety disorder diagnoses have skyrocketed. But we have to also remember, like, our lives, and especially these things, have robbed us of some really important skills. Like all of this, the busy life and the constant email barrage, and then if you add to it a scroll on the phone and the social media, we are more and more cut off at the neck, and we're not feeling like, oh, do I have tightness in the chest, butterflies in my gut, this ability to check in and be like, what's actually happening here? And I can get more into detail about that in a moment. But especially when we are getting this constant switch between social media and email, and I'm doing this and I'm listening to the teacher, but I'm also checking my email. All of that, robs us of our attention span and our ability to focus. And it's also training the brain to not focus. So again, like whatever we do regularly is brain training. So we're just getting better and better at not focusing. When we learn inherently, it's difficult and uncomfortable and frustrating. And if we give up at that moment of frustration, we're training our brain to give up. We have to push through. Like when we were teaching the kids in our program, when you feel frustrated, that's awesome. That means you're so close. That means you're actually learning. It's all getting in there. Like the new neural networks are being coded. And we're just going to push through that feeling of frustration. And that's like an exciting, good feeling. So reframing that. Yes.
We see our teen as having a problem processing, right? Or regulating. We see that all of this is happening. What can we do to help them?
So in the moment, there are lots of tools, and I'll try to really simplify a few so that you can take some away. We teach the 5 dials approach. This is something we've crafted, distilling down thousands of years of ancient practices combined with modern neuroscience, understanding positive psychology. All of these things we've distilled down all of the manipulations to 5 dials. So the idea is that if you're a human being and you have a beating heart and an autonomic nervous system, you have 5 dials that are connected to that autonomic nervous system and within your control. So that's breath, movement, focus, literally how your eyes are moving, and also the spotlight of your attention, self-talk, and non-sleep deep rest. And we can write those down maybe somewhere in the chat. So again, it's breath, movement, focus, self-talk, and non-sleep deep rest. So here's a real life example. Your teen comes in and you see that they're anxious. Maybe you ask them, like, what do you feel in your chest? What do you feel in your stomach? So starting to teach this interoceptive awareness. So that's all the awareness of the sensations inside our body. But then if we're getting to a point where the anxiety is really raising, if you keep the focus on the tightness in the chest, for example, it's just going to get worse. It grows. Because again, remember, what you pay attention to grows. So in that case, if a very quick, simple technique is to shift that spotlight of attention from the interoceptive to exteroceptive. So say, okay, let's pause. Let's look around the room. Let's count all of the blue things in the room. So it forces your teen to turn the spotlight outward. And you may say, but isn't that just distracting them from a problem? No, this is a technique to help them regulate their nervous system. We need to be in a calm, clear state to then be able to reflect and talk about what's going on. We don't need to continue to spiral and make it worse in order to get to the bottom of something. So it's a quick tool to switch the spotlight. You could also say, okay, let's close our eyes and count all of the different sounds we can hear in this environment, both inside the room and maybe outside. Anything that takes the attention outward. Like, what are we smelling? So that's using that spotlight of attention dial. Our focus dial, so the eyes, if your teen has been like this for a long time or on a screen, when our eyes are turned inward and focused at something close, this is called the interpupillary distance. That eye position actually releases acetylcholine in the brain, which is the neurochemical that gets us really focused, which is great when we're doing focused work, but it is not sustainable. You've got about 90 minutes maximum of that kind of sustained focus. So a quick way to instantly calm the brain is to look away and look at something far and have a kind of a landscape view where you're not really focusing on one particular thing for too long. Just that landscape view, look at the window or even look, in the room. And just that will help calm the brain pretty quickly. Another thing, the breath is one of the most important or fast tools. It works very quickly, but it takes a little concerted effort. And I know a parent telling a teen, like, okay, we're going to do this breath. Sometimes depending on how old they are or your relationship, they might roll their eyes. And that's why we're getting this program in school. So it's just part of the curriculum. And then you don't have to worry about it as a parent. But there's something called the respiratory sinus arrhythmia. And that just means that every time you inhale, your heart rate increases a little. And every time you exhale, it decreases a little. So we hack that. If you want to lower the heart rate and calm the nervous system, you'll be extending or elongating the exhale, because that's when your heart rate is slowing. So really simple technique is just count whatever your inhale is. If it's 4 seconds long, you'll exhale for 8. So just doubling the length of the exhale in relation to the inhale. It's the fastest way to lower the heart rate and turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. So that rest and repair state. I mean, should be your go-to. And that's something you can be doing all day long. You could be doing it in a meeting. You can be doing while you're driving. I mean, this is something you can take everywhere and anywhere. And truly works. This is not a like, oh, maybe if I clear my mind and I have the quiet room and I'll feel better. No, if you double your exhale in relation to your inhale, it will shift your physiology in real time and you'll feel real results. The non-sleep deep rest, one of the dials that's rest in our culture has been lost, unfortunately. And rest is not a nice to have. It's a neurobiological imperative. Even when it just comes to learning happens in 2 parts. We have the sustained focus, and it has to be paired with rest in order for those new neural connections to take hold. So like our program in schools is built to give these little rests at the end of every period in a high school and a middle school. So all of that gets locked in, and then you have sustained energy and focus throughout the day. Again, you can't focus for more than 90 minutes. So it also is putting little bits of rest. Non-sleep deep rest just has to be eyes closed, silence, nature sounds, or sounds of like the crystal bowls that are behind me. Kind of, droning thing, but not music. Music we think is relaxing, and it may be to some extent, but it actually activates the motor networks of the brain. So you can't quite get into that deep, deep state of relaxation that we need to put a deposit into our body budget. So that's one more practical kind of background thing I want to explain is this concept of the body budget. And our brain is actually here to manage the systems of our body. That's its main job. Its main job is not thinking and analyzing. It's to manage the systems of our body so that we stay alive. And so we can help it. We've got deposits, withdrawals, and investments. And if we're just making withdrawals all day long, staying on this too long, withdrawal, eating, not nutrient dense food, that's a withdrawal. We think we're putting food in, but if it's hard to digest and it doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it, it's actually making our body work harder. So withdrawal. Bad sleep, withdrawal. Not giving ourselves rests, that's more withdrawals. So we can put deposits in throughout the day. Looking away from the computer, deposit. Taking a walk outside, getting sunlight in your eyeballs, doing that doubling the length of the exhale, that's a deposit. Eating really nourishing, nutrient-dense food. Taking a rest, a non-sleep deep rest, even 3 minutes of rest, that's putting in a deposit. And we really do underestimate, both adults ourselves, the power of just a few minutes. Like I've got 3 minutes between meetings. Oh, I'm just going to go check my da-da-da. And that's the worst thing you can possibly do, because again, you're keeping those eyes turned inward and focus close. You're just staying in that hyper alert state. So it's just continuing to withdraw from the body budget. So if you have 3 minutes between meetings, you want to close your eyes, lay down, rest your head on your desk, silence, nature sounds, or like a sound bath. It's amazing even what 3 minutes will do. Coming out more patient, have, clearer thinking, more creative. So, I mean, if we can model that, but also with our teens, that's probably the easiest, with lowest barrier to entry. Say, how about we're going to lay down and we're going to listen to the sound bath together. Let's just lay down. We need to put a deposit in our body. And then we start, it's all of those little tweaks. We're going to double the length of our exhale. In that moment of anxiety, we're going to turn it outward. We're going to count all the blue things in the room. Every time we shift our physiology in real time, it's updating the operating system. So we have new features. We just operate differently. We're creating new neural connections. So these are the kinds of fundamental things we need to be doing on a regular basis. In addition, if we're seeing a psychologist or a teen is seeing a psychologist, that's great. But that's once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. If you want to go build muscle mass, do you go to the gym once a week or once every 2 weeks? No, it won't work. You're not going to see any difference. We have to do little things like this every day throughout the day to make this updated operating system. And actually it heals the interoceptive networks of the brain, and it makes these new practices reflexive, which is key. Meaning you don't have to think about it anymore. You just have a new way of operating. When you feel the tightness in the chest, or you just automatically go to doubling the length of your exhale in relation to your inhale. You don't even have to think about it. Those kinds of tools are just there.
Okay, so we're going to, I love the 3 minutes because 3 minutes is doable, and you can you can do that. I love, so we have the 5 dials approach:
Yes.
breath, movement, focus, self-taught, talk, and non-sleep deep rest. And what we're doing is we are modeling, doing with, and teaching our young people to incorporate the tools within these 5 dials throughout their daily life. And once they've mastered that, when they are in moments of anxiety or agitation or something that they need to re-regulate, they will use that tool and perhaps double it. So since I am in a momentary crisis situation, I'm starting to panic over a test or something. It doesn't have to be anything extreme. Usually for breath, I breathe in 2 counts and out 4. But now I'm feeling anxious over the test. Let me breathe in 4 counts and out 8.
Well, the number really is based upon your particular lung capacity.
Okay.
I would do whatever always start with an exhale, because that's where we skimp. Most humans don't completely exhale, like really, really squeeze the ribs in towards each other, navel back towards the spine. When you think you're done exhaling, you're usually not done. So we exhale everything out to start, then take your biggest, longest, fullest inhale, softening the belly, letting the diaphragm have room to flatten out and contract. And whatever that inhale happens to be, maybe it's 6 counts, but whatever it is, double the length for the exhale. So don't restrict yourself to, like, if you can inhale for 6 counts, do that. Don't stop it at 4. So whatever your deepest, fullest breath is, and then double the length. And I mean, we've talked about breath. We talked about non-sleep deep rest. We talked about focus and the spotlight of your attention, but we haven't talked about self-talk yet. So I'm happy to discuss that whenever
Let's do that.
Okay, so self-talk, like I said, whatever we tell this well-trained, loyal dog, it's going to do. So we can use that to our advantage and tell it a different story. But using the technology of thousands of years of practice, every single culture throughout history has chanted, uses mantra. If you look in deeply enough, in every religion and every culture, that has existed because it works. And we now know why it works. But in order for it to be effective, it needs to be something short and simple that can be repeated a lot. So having an affirmation on your mirror in the morning to read, that's nice, but it's not going to move the needle in terms of updating this operating system. So we need either one word that's 2 syllables or 2 words that are 1 syllable each. So something like worthy, it gets to all of our not good enoughs. A lot of us, when we drill down, a lot of us, even adults, struggle with the question of like, am I worthy of any of this, or, worthy of love or worthy of success or whatever. So that might be someone's, for a kid who's dealing with anxiety and the pressures of school and friends and all of that, I'm loved or I'm safe may be a good self-talk. So it has to be something that you can like mentally add to your footsteps as you walk down the hall, as you walk down the street, as you walk around the house. So you're just thinking, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. And to the washing of the dishes, I'm safe. When you're exercising, when you're doing squats, when you're like anything you can add it to that's rhythmic, you're just thinking it. Nobody knows you're doing it. But it's that kind of repetition that's going to make the shift. We can't just say it once or twice or 15 times. We have to say it thousands of times. Okay. And this is a realistic way for people to do it in their lives. When I'm teaching someone who's coming to me to like go through their spiritual journey, I'm teaching them to chant out loud for 40 minutes in the morning alone or whatever, but not many people are on that path. And we're trying to make this as accessible as possible. So this is how we can use that same technology, but work it into our day and start to see real results.
I love that you use the word accessible, because what you've given us seems super easy. I know there's some parents that are like, oh, what? Well, it seems really easy. But that's the whole point, is that it's accessible. It's easy. You can model it. You can do it with. And you'll be surprised if you, through repetition, if you just keep going, you'll be surprised when you catch your teen doing it on their own without prompting. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it will happen. And they're easy things to model. So you can check our comment section. Jessica has taken wonderful notes in there. You can go to Jenny's therealrebelhuman.com.
The Rebel Human.
I'm sorry, The Rebel Human. I'm therebelhuman.com. The link is in the comment section. That way you can have access to all of her information and programming. You can see what she's doing in schools, what she does one-on-one. She has all the information there. The most important thing I learned today was what you pay attention to grows. So we need to pay attention to the positive things and have those grow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not, I know a lot of people talk about manifesting in the universe and all of that, and maybe there's something to that, but at the end of the day, it's really just this. What orders are we giving this? And it will act it out.
I love that. What orders are we giving? It will act it out. Yes. Thank you, Jenny, for joining us.
You're so welcome. It's lovely to see you.
This has been wonderful. It really has. I want everybody to, your homework is to try the 5 dials approach. First with yourself, and then extend it to your family. Mm-hmm. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. You should join us tomorrow at night. We're going to begin tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Time is the inaugural session of Destination College 2023. And you don't want to miss it. Once a week, for 8 weeks, we will discuss an aspect of the college admissions process, one aspect, 1 hour a week. And that way, that will help you distill information and to navigate, that maze and mystery that is that college admissions process, no matter where you are in the process. It also will give you a topic to discuss at home with your youth just once a week. So you're not bombarding them with all the topics at once on a Saturday. Once a week, you get it for 8 weeks in a row. If you would like to register, it's not too late. Jessica just popped in the registration for Destination College. It is chock full of experts. I think we're up to 17 experts, different experts each week. There's at least 2, sometimes 3, who know what they're talking about. Whether we're talking about paying for college in 1 week, whether we're talking about testing for college in another week, we have experts on those issues, and they're joining us. So please check the link. You can see our course outline for the 8 weeks and the registration button. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I hope to see you tomorrow night for the first session of Destination College 2023. Thank you, Jenny. It's been a pleasure.
You're so welcome.